So recently, Stacey Abrams went on the 85 South podcast show. And, you know, I met a few of those brothers, actually, when I went on the Corey Holcomb show a few years ago. You know, some good brothers. And, when I was out in L.A. And they had Stacey Abrams on, and they was asking her, you know, a real question about politicians, especially in the Democrat Party, why they are afraid to mention black people. I want you to hear that short exchange and what Stacey Abrams says, because I want to come back with some logical ways to respond to the Stacey Abrams and the Democrat Party, how they're, you know, freaking liars, how they double talk, and how their statements is so freaking anti-black. Well, let's go ahead and roll that clip.
Is why are politicians so afraid to say that they're doing something specifically for black people? Like they use the cloak of poor people and people of color, the underprivileged. Why is it that you can't just come out and say, I'm doing this for black people because black people need it? Because so many things have been done to us throughout the history of this country. So many things have been done to us, but very little has been done specifically for us. Why do you think that is?
Because African Americans represent 12% of the population. And so if you are a traditional politician doing the math, you think if I name this group, I am going to lose other people, and I can't get, if every single black person voted for me, this may not get me what I want. So let me make it vague enough that other people don't get offended by helping.
Oh, you just gave me an idea. I hate to cut you off,
Please.
But black people, we just gonna have to start finding, like, the candidate that we don't like the most. We just gotta act like we like them, so won't nobody like them. Think about that shit. Like if we just showed up at the next election acting like we liked the one person we really didn't like,
can you try
all
that?
the white people be like, I don't know about this guy.
If you can try this experiment in 2023, I would be greatly appreciative.
Represent 12%.
We're 12%. We may be inching towards 13% of the population. So on a federal level, that's been part of the problem, that it's been a challenge. Now, I got into trouble from a lot of folks when I ran in 2018 because I specifically talked about black people. But I also talk about Latinos, I talk about Asian Americans, because each of those communities face different challenges. But I wake up black, I go to sleep black, and I live black. And for me, it is anathema to pretend that I am not who I am. I'm not always going to only talk about what we can do for black people, but I'm always going to make certain I am thinking about how we serve the black community. And I think it is disingenuous to walk away from it. But to your point, if people want to know why it happens because in the math, it's hard to win an election with just black people.
Now, where have I heard that statement before about not only doing something for black people? Well, let me see. There's some nostalgia here. Oh, I know we heard that from. Let's play that.
The reality also is this. Any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country.
I knew I heard that before. So they just basically confirming the Democrat mantra is to continue the benign neglect policy that was introduced in the Moynihan report about black people. Don't say nothing about black people. In that particular Moynihan report, they talk about Hispanic groups, talk about Asian groups, talk about everybody else but black people. Don't promise black people anything. But let's get to Stacey Abrams here. Now, she says that the reason why we can't focus on black people is because that black people are only 12% of the population, and it will make people, uncomfortable. Instead of her saying that talking about black issues make white society uncomfortable, notice she didn't want to say who it was that got uncomfortable. See, Stacey couldn't come on my show because, see, that's why they go to people like comedians. They don't want to come to people like myself, because the first time she would have said make people uncomfortable, I say, what people are uncomfortable, Stacey? Can you name that group of people who's uncomfortable by black issues? That's the first thing I would have asked her. I would have pressed her on who are you talking about? You're not going to throw no vague term like people. No. Who are these people? Identify these people so we know who they are. So we have you on the record talking about who these people are, right? So we could talk about them and deal with them too. So you didn't identify who these people are, but we know exactly what you're talking about, right? Stacey says, well, you know, we can't focus on black issues because, you know, you're only 12% of the population. I told y'all before, that's a freaking lie. And they know it. A lot of black people don't even participate in the census, for one. A lot of them don't. Two, they're not trying to count all black people. They're not trying to count us at all. They're not. Number three, as I said before, it doesn't even logically make sense. Black people have been 12% of the population since the 70s. That means that however many black people have been born, they've been dying that much at the same time. Let me tell you something. Yes, you know, the health of black people isn't good in this country. No, it's not. But it's not so bad where just as much as black people born, they're dying. That's not true. A lot of black people having kids all day long. And let's go back to the 70s. They was having way more kids in the 70s than they do today. Way more kids in the 80s. Way more kids in the 90s. For sure, those 3 decades, they were having them kids. So how black people just stay at 12% of the population? Now, I look at the current census number, and they said black people are 12.4% of the population. So according to Stacey Abrams, we can't focus on black people because they're only 12% of the population. But then her party talks about putting together, task force to battle misinformation, disinformation on black voters. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why would you put that together for people that basically what Stacey said was insignificant people? That doesn't make sense. Why would the Democrat Party spend $30 million to target black voters in the midterms if black voters were insignificant? Because according to Stacey, we can't talk about black people because basically your numbers is not high, so you're insignificant in the United States of America. This is what Stacey Abrams has said. But then when the brothers say, okay, well, why don't we just act like we like a candidate that everybody hates? And then, he would say, well, could you try that in 2023? Well, you just said black people were insignificant to talk about. And so you can't talk about black people whatsoever. And we only 12% of the population. And you can't just win an election with black people. Okay. And yet you don't want him to try his experiment. You're a freaking liar. Stacey Abrams is a liar. Now, let's get to what I was talking about here when it comes to the Asian population. According to the 2020 census, Asian Americans make up 6% of the population at 19.9 million. Their numbers actually increased from 4.8 million in 2010 to 19.9 million. There's a lot of Asians coming over here now. Okay, so they're 6%. So if we're 12% of the population and you say you can't speak about us specifically because we're only 12% and you can't win an election with only 12% of the population, well, how come y'all had no problem talking about Asian this and Asian that when they're 6% of the population? They're less in population than black Americans. And yet you had no problem speaking about them. You had no problem saying we need to protect them. You had no problem talking about stop Asian hate. You had no problem speaking about Asian. You had no problem saying that, Stacey Abrams. But when it comes to black people, well, we can't be speaking about that. That's going to make people offended. Listen, this is why Stacey Abrams is going to lose. Black people in Georgia, that clip right there, that will say, oh, you done. You are done. They said, listen, I wouldn't vote for her. Hell no. Why would I vote for her? If you can't mention me, if you can't make me a priority, you can't tell me what you're going to specifically do for black people, then you don't get my vote. If you got to say, like the brother say, if you got to say poor communities, distressed communities, you got to say people of color, if you got to say minorities, you're not talking about me. And when you don't mention me, when you don't talk about what you're specifically going to do for me and my community, that means you don't want my vote. That's all that means. And that's fine. You don't have to get my vote. You don't have to get it. That is perfectly fine. And black people got to be offended when you don't hear your name called, when you hear everybody else's name called. They don't say, well, you know, LGBT makes up 2 to 3% of the population, but they have no problem saying LGBT. They got no problem saying LGBT. They less than Asians. See, that's a freaking lie that woman told you. All she was talking about the benign neglect policy. She said, oh, I mentioned black people. You ain't mentioned nothing about no policies for black people. We got to take a hard line on that. A very, very hard line on that. Listen, Trump, of all people, has said that black Americans built the country. Democrats would never say that. And they supposed to be our freaking friends. Trump don't supposed to be mentioning that. You know what I'm saying? When he was saying that to black people at that event that they had, he said you never get credit for it. Like, he actually said that crap. Why isn't our Democrat politicians say things like that? See, that's what I'm saying. We know the Republicans are on as a whole. Well, you got to be honest. You have to be honest. But the Democrats are worse. They don't even want to mention you because people will get offended. Just say, go ahead and say these white folks will get offended. Just say that. Because a lot of them are ate up with white supremacy. That's why they get offended. Anything related to black people is offense to them because they don't want black people to have a freaking thing. That's why. And let's be honest. They don't get offended when you mention LGBT because a lot of them are LGBT. They don't get offended when they say Asian because they actually prefer Asians. And if you saw my live stream on the Phillip Scott show, I may have to take that clip out where I had, actually a guy named Michael. He's a Taiwanese guy. And he said he follows at least our main news channel. And we got to talking about Asians. I may go ahead on and clip that and post that so y'all really can see that. Or I may just do a follow up on our podcast here so y'all can see it. And he really talked about, I pressed him to admit that he say how white folks prefer Asians. And I was prefer him. I was glad he talked about that. So white folks are not offended when you talk about Asians, right? They obviously not offended when you do something for them, give them money. But when it comes to us, it's, anti-black racism. And what's the point of a black politician? See, that representation matters crap that black people started in this country. I understood the basis of it. I get why they started it, but white supremacy made sure to co-opt that, and they made sure to still not do nothing for black people. You understand? Because I get it. The representation matters. Ideology was, well, we get somebody that look like us up there. They can fight for us. They come from our communities. Well, when you're dealing with the devil say, okay, yeah. You can get some black people. And then they get black people out the boule. They get these, black people that they say, look, we'll let you be a senator. We'll let you be a congressperson. But you can't mention black people like you're going to do something for them. You can't do nothing for black people. And you cannot punish white folks. That's the two things you can't do. Okay. And as long as you follow that rule right there and do what we tell you to do and what messages we tell you to say, and okay, you will get paid. You will get good checks. We'll make sure you're in the media. Listen, you don't have to worry about anything. We'll give you speaking engagements. We'll hook you up with book deals. We'll do everything we can for you. Okay. You will not have to worry about money in the United States of America. You never have to worry. Just follow those rules we told you. Don't speak up for black people and don't punish white people. That's it. And you are good in the United States of America. And all your politicians, no matter who they are, they all follow the same mantra. Notice that even the ones that go up there, these so-called progressives, right? Even when they go up there, they're doing the exact same thing. They following the Democrat mantra. The Democrat mantra is not black people. It's maintaining white supremacy, just in a different way. You understand? Kind of like if you saw that skit from Dave Chappelle from the Chappelle Show. He had a skit talking about the gay KKK. Well, it was like if he did like gay lawn service, gay this or okay. Well, there's a part they call it gay KKK. And then when a guy shows up, he said, we part of the gay KKK. He said, and we hate in a different way. You know, he said that, well, you know, we was having a conversation, you know, about, you know, you guys being in the neighborhood. You know, have you ever, you know, thought about going back to Africa? Like he said it in such a nice way, right? Instead of the screaming and yelling and you know what I'm saying, the cross burning. And that is a Democrat Party right there. That's them. They hate in a different way. They do it in a nice way. If you've seen that skit, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I laugh at that skit still to this day. You know, Dave Chappelle was way ahead of his time. He really was. You know, Dave Chappelle was doing things that quote unquote get you canceled way before canceling was even a word. But that's why they don't mention us, and that's fine. You know, could you imagine you're dating a woman or a man, but they won't mention you to nobody? That's like equivalent to what they're doing, because, you know, today this is like something very important for people who date or whatever. That's like you dating someone and they don't post you on their Instagram. You're in a full-fledged relationship with this person, but they never post you on Instagram. They'll post, well, they with everybody else. They with everybody else, they'll post them. But when it come to you, nobody even know about you whatsoever. And they tell you, well, you know, yeah, we together, but I can't be saying it out loud because certain people may get offended by me being with you and this and that. So they were like, well, if you can't be seen with me on social media, then I don't need to be with you. What's the point of that? You know what I'm saying? You would get offended if some woman or man was had to hide you, basically. Didn't want you on social media for whatever the reason. And it's not that they didn't want this. We're not talking about a public figure or nothing like that. We talking about a regular everyday person. Yes, and regular everyday people post their people all day long. Okay, they would get, you know, you would feel offended by that and say, nah, I'm not going to be with you. Well, black people need to say, if the Democrat Party is afraid to say black, if you think it offends people, Stacey Abrams and Kamala here, you know, all that, if it offends people, okay, continue to feel that way. And I'm offended because you feel that you need to cater to racists. That's no problem. Cater to them. And I won't vote for you. To my brothers and sisters in Georgia, and I know there's a lot of black people in Georgia, don't vote for that woman. Matter of fact, you know how I feel about it. Don't vote for don't vote for no Democrat. You know, sit it out. That's what I say. Sit it out. You know, now if you want to be a person that want to do a protest vote, you can to the other side, but at minimum you can sit it out. At minimum, why vote for somebody that don't even want to mention you? She has no problem mentioning LGBT. She has no problem mentioning Asian. They're only 6% of the population. So she says, because you can't win elections just with black people, let's recap, because we're 12, well, now they claim 12.4% of the population. Because of that, and because other people is going to be bothered by mentioning black people, but yet she can mention Asians, which is 6% of the population, LGBT, which is about, 3% of the population. She can mention people that's less than black people, but she can't mention more. But then when the brother come up with the idea, say, hey, well, let's go ahead on and like one politician that everybody hate, then she say, oh, no, can you try that in 2023? So that's why I'm saying that's where she caught herself on a lie. See, she couldn't come on my show saying that, because I'm saying, well, why, Stacey, when he just said that, why did you say, can you try that in 2023? Because black people don't matter to you. I would have told her, black people don't matter to you. If you won't mention us, you won't specifically talk about us, I said, because you talk about LGBT and they're 3% of the population, they're less, right? But you have no problem mentioning them. All those same so-called people you're talking about, they're not offended when you mention that. See, that's why they don't come on our programs. They pick who they want to go talk to. They pick because they don't want to be hit with those hard questions. And y'all need to start tweeting these people, right? Start flooding their Twitter and say, hey, why don't you go talk to Brother Phil? Why don't you go talk to Sister Vicky? Why don't you go talk to, Sister Demetria? Why don't you go talk to, everybody? Why don't you go talk to people? Go talk to them. Go talk to them. Tweet everybody you think they need to talk to. Say, why during the voting season you never come and talk to black media at all? And we ain't not talking about Boulay Martin, because he's not considered black media. He's Democrat establishment, old black media. That's what he is. He I don't even view him as black media. He's Democrat establishment. But ask them, why don't y'all go interview with them? Why? You mean to tell me you can't take 10, 15 minutes out of your day to go sit down and do an interview? Marcel Dixon came over here and interviewed with us before. Even Marianne Williamson came on my show before. She came and to talk to the black community. But yet black people that so-called running for office never could come talk to black media. What the hell up with that? That should tell you a lot right there. And then when they do go talk to black people, they go talk to some comedians. And nothing against comedians, but politics and disseminating that is not what they do. They're comedians. They can try their best. They'll go talk to Charlemagne. He's not a political figure. He's a radio DJ, entertainment. That's what he do. They rather go talk to people that's involved in entertainment than go and talk to people who deal with this all the time. They don't want to be pressed, because they research your program now before they go on. They just want to say, okay, I go, no problem. Because Stacey Abrams, she wouldn't like being on with me, because I wouldn't tolerate that. Because the first thing I would say, okay, Stacey, what do you say to black voters who are offended by what you just said? That you just said that basically they don't matter. What do you say to those people? I said, because what I'm hearing, I wouldn't vote for you based off of that. You can mention LGBT, you can mention Asian, but you can't mention black people because so-called people will be offended, and you won't even name these people. You see how that doesn't work out for you by saying that as a black woman? Who cares what other people feel? You trying to get a racist vote. That's what it sounds like. But y'all let me know what y'all think about Stacey Abrams here. And this is why she will lose. Again, she will lose. Because when you make statements like that, that's equivalent to Kamala. And, Kamala, she lost. She dropped out. Only reason she got in there because Biden put it up there. We didn't select her. But you know how Biden's, hiring process is. You got to have a zaddy, and he go ahead on and hire you for a job. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here today. We greatly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. That way, when we post the next podcast, click the like button. It's very, very important. If you are enjoying the show, leave us a love offering. We also thank the people who have joined our membership for our channel. We greatly appreciate you joining. That definitely supports the channel. And definitely we'll see you next time.